Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to have this conversation. I mean, just to sort of kick it off, right? Like, we've been talking about all the work that you've been doing in Jaipur. Literally within like less than 2 years, you've done so much work. Opened the Jaipur Center for Art. There's Sarvato, which is on travelers list right now, and so much other like interesting, fun reasons to go back to Jaipur. So curious to know what sort of like triggered all of that, and I mean, why do you even feel the need to do all of these new activities?
Well, good evening. First of all, thank you for having me, Shay, the whole GQ team. It's my first time in Bangalore, and already can't wait to be back. So to answer your question, I think of all the cities in India, I think the one city that really does need did really need a cultural renaissance was ours. It's a city that was built on the back of culture, and not only culture, art and craft, and fashion, and so much architecture as well. And I when I moved back to India a few years ago, I felt that we were really not any more part of the global discourse around culture and things that mattered. But obviously different ways in which you can engage in those conversations and different avenues through which you can do so. But I didn't see that we were part of the conversation anymore, and so really that was the crux of where both my sister and I, actually hugely inspired by other members of our family, started in our own little humble capacities, doing one activation here and the other one over there, and today we are so proud that we're a city that is so full of energy and life, and everybody wants a part of Jaipur. Everybody wants to come there for different reasons, and it's a city that gives all of us so much joy.
Good evening, and this is something which has been on my mind. With everything that you've been reimagining with Jaipur, what is the line between preserving legacy and presenting it in a very contemporary way to the audience of today?
It's the most important thing, actually. You have cities that die, and you have cities that stay alive, and find ways in which to stay relevant through millennia. And I feel that Jaipur, I don't know how familiar you are with the history of Jaipur, but actually, a gentleman who built Jaipur about 300 years ago, actually, in his mind and to the minds of his contemporaries in that period, that was a contemporary project. Nobody was 300 years ago in India, in Rajasthan, which was politically a little bit unstable, especially Jaipur, because you're so close to Delhi, and Delhi was kind of always the position was always a little bit tumultuous. And here was a man 300 years ago who decided to move away from a hill for defense reasons,
right,
to a flat surface, built a modern city with modern facilities, services, and even today you don't have actually flooding in the old city.
Visionary.
It was the first smart city of this country.
Yeah. One of the first planned cities of the country, and actually we're working on a beautiful exhibition where we're going to trace our the journey back to our roots of the foundation of Jaipur through maps, pictures, etc. And he wrote about it extensively as well. So documentation, which has been something that our country is sadly not done so well through the last 3,000-4,000 years. Jai Singh was thinking about it 300 years ago. And I think that the fact that he built the city was in itself a very contemporary project and contemporary move. And I think that really set the tone for successive generations for the last 300 years. And we've found in our city different ways in which to continue to reinvent ourselves. And I think that has really been if you ask me, the most important reason that has kept Jaipur relevant.
Yeah.
Which is also why the contemporary art project that I've started doing with a dear friend Noel Kadar over the last couple of years. That's where it stemmed from, and that was really, we felt that we're not adding any more to the contemporary dialogue around art in our city. There was a gentleman. Maybe 150 years ago, Maharaja Sawai Ram Singh, and he was the first person who brought the camera to, one of the first people that brought the camera to India. And if you see his work, if it hadn't been for his work, we wouldn't know how ladies in Indian palaces looked in that period. The only evidence that we have of how Indian ladies looked in Indian palaces, and that's not just Maharanis. he's gone and photographed, because obviously in Rajput palaces in Rajasthan and even other places, you had the Zanana system, which is where you had all the women used to stay in an enclosed palace.
Right.
It wasn't historically always like that, but it certainly was like that from about the 15th century onwards. And in the late 1800s, he went with his camera into the Zanana and started photographing Maharanis and concubines, and even the guards actually in the Zanana used to be eunuchs. So even men were not even allowed to be guards at the Zanana. So some of the most incredible work you'll see from his period, including also selfies. So some of the first selfies a series of selfies, you know,
Wow.
and in different avatars. So you'll find him totally dressed down, just with a lungi, because he was a big Shiv Bhakt, to his regal Maharaja outfit, and so incredibly provocating work that you know kind of continued what Jai Singh started, and so you know very able and big shoes for all of us to fill.
It's such a fascinating story.
Yeah.
With all the travel that you've been doing, I'm very inquisitive to know when you are at an international front row, what is it that goes on in your mind about how do I take this back to India and what can I do with it? I'm very inquisitive to know.
You know, I'm a very proud Indian, and I'm very proud to be from Jaipur, and I'm very proud to be from Rajasthan. And most of the time, when I'm at these events, and I'm not thinking about when I'm playing polo next, I'm thinking about how much better off we are, and that we do everything that these people do, but better. You know, and we know how to throw parties way better than these guys. We know how to throw conferences way better than these guys. Our sense of fashion is better than these guys, and we've got places that are better than these to see. So obviously there is that comparison, and often, and at the same time, I'm not trying to be snobbish or you know, or snobbish in any way, but I do think that there's so much beauty in this country, and so much untapped potential. Yeah. Having said that, you know, I recently went to New York, and I was just telling Sid, who's sitting over there, this story, that you get so, like, I live in Jaipur. Yeah. A lot of my life revolves around Jaipur. Mm-hmm. I don't travel as much as I used to do. And in my life in Jaipur, one gets so caught up in you know, the daily kind of hustle, you know, between work and family and polo and whatnot, that you kind of, in a certain sense, start to lose sight of what's going on in the world. Not in the literal sense, because you're connected through Instagram and all of these other ways in which you're connected, but often traveling is you forget how important it is. I went to New York just now, and you know, went from Jaipur, where I had been for a couple of months, mm-hmm. and suddenly, and I hadn't been to New York in about 7 years, mm-hmm. and suddenly you're in this mega city with millions of people. You know, just I was standing in the middle of one of the squares, and you had hundreds of people just crossing each other, right. And everybody had a phone call to make, and somebody had a meeting to go to, somebody was going on a date, and you realize that there are so many lives being lived, networking happening, so many connections being made or broken, and it just gives you perspective on like how insignificant you are, and how great the world is, and how many great potential possibilities there are out there.
How do you sort of see polo becoming a bit more of a played sport, like a bit like perhaps poker or golf, right? Which perhaps it's not today, or maybe even canvassing to get it back into the Olympics.
Well, so the theme in my life that I'm most engaged with is conservation, and you know, I view my role in polo a little bit from the conservation lens. You know, it's other than being the sport that you know that our family's been so keenly involved with for generations. It's also, you know, we claim to be one of the countries that started playing polo before anybody else in the world. The British certainly found it in India in the late 1800s, and then made rules and took it to the world. And the version of polo that's played today across the world is what they found over here in India. So we believe that it's India's gift to the world. So all of my efforts and you know, the reason I play so much, and obviously you know, that the part of my life that most, or the part of my life that gives me the most happiness is polo. But other than that, I really see it as my responsibility to keep this sport going and alive, and promote it to the best of my capabilities. Not only because it's India's gift to the world and it's got so much heritage value attached to it, but also because if you haven't watched a game of polo, it's one of the most attractive things. You know, to see 8 horses galloping up and down at 30 miles an hour, stopping on a dime, turning around, and then go again at 30 miles an hour, crashing into each other, is actually what we need to do. Is we need to find ways in which to, we need to find a way to telecast it. We need to find a way to shorten the game a little bit, make it a bit more kind of appealing to the crowds. And you've got models that exist in our country that, models that have changed the fortunes of sport and sportsmen. I recently went to the Kabaddi League and I was chatting with a couple of the guys, professionals from Haryana, and how that league has changed their fortunes is incredible. It's really a case study. So we're waiting for that to happen to our sport as well.
Do you see polo gear, which already does get manufactured a lot in Jaipur, in Rajasthan? Do you see the kind of world-class work that's coming out of there finding more appeal and being able to market that to audiences overseas?
Well, in all my life, growing up in Rajasthan, the part that I've enjoyed the most is actually interacting with people. And of all those people, the part that I've enjoyed the most is to interact with artisans. I think I do my polo with a lot of passion, and I put in a lot of time, and I have a lot of emotions. And each time I speak about polo, there's a lot of those emotions that come out. But you wouldn't say that about me if you'd met an artisan. These are people that do not want any attention. These are people that really, their heart beats for what they do. And these jutis actually that I'm wearing are made by one such artisan who works out of Barmer. And his whole village, they actually only make these jutis. And when you speak to them, they made the polo boots for Sawai Padmanabh Singh, and they made the polo boots for some of the other famous polo players that our country's produced. And they don't find jobs anymore. So the question that you're asking me, whether we have the potential to do so and the know-how to do so, absolutely yes. But for some reason or the other, we don't have the confidence in our artisans to be able to produce for us goods that can equal goods with a stamp from Argentina or a stamp from England. So that kind of confidence in Indian products really needs to come back alive. And I think it's happening. You've seen over the last few months that people are buying Indian more. People are trusting Indian products a lot more. And I think as a result of that, hopefully that should have a knock-on effect on this industry as well. Certainly in terms of ability, some of the tailors that you'll find in Rajasthan, in fact, the polo pants that we wear to play are called Jodhpurs. And they come from, Jodhpur, which is a neighboring city to ours. So ability is there and craftsmanship is there and the know-how is also there. Just that the trust in the market needs to we need to find that a little bit more.
So I'd love to know, is Label Pacho debuting soon? Do we have a line of clothing coming out?
Well, I did a collaboration with USPA. They've been incredibly, supportive towards both me, but also Polo. One of the brands that have, for the last so many years, kept, supporting Polo. There was a moment where I'd gone to New Zealand to play some Polo just last year, and just walked into a Polo tournament there, and USPA was supporting that, while supporting the US Open in America at the same time, and something in Jaipur. So they are really, one of those people that really push Polo quite a lot. Right. So I did a line with them a couple of years ago, and then actually also now, but nothing other than that.
How do you even explain to someone the sort of potholes on that path that only you would know about? Yeah. Like, how do you even begin to explain that to somebody?
Well, there aren't many, to be honest with you. I'm very lucky that I have a fairly normal life. Been raised like that. We've always, grew up in a boarding school and went away to England when I was a little bit older. So never really have had moments that have kind of stunned me. Maybe one I can remember was I was at Mayo College, and when my grandfather passed away, I was about 12 years old, and that was one of the most profound moments in my life, because I was till that point really not exposed to the cultural side of my life, which I had to live in Jaipur, which I'm very proud about, and I do with a lot of responsibility. But when he passed away, I was brought back from Ajmer. Our school was in Ajmer, to Jaipur, and there was crowds of people. It took us 3 hours to go from to drive the last 1 kilometer to our home, because it was just full of people. They'd shaved their heads off, and they were just kind of chanting his name, and kind of obviously mourning since they'd lost him. And suddenly to be taken home, they shaved my head. I had to cremate his body, and then for the next 12 days, I sat every day in the Betak as his successor, and so many people from all around the world, from ministers to actors and dignitaries and people that I've grown up idolizing, came and sat next to me, shed a tear or two often, spoke to me. And those 12 days were really defining in my life, and I really understood the weight of, of the shoes or the responsibility that I had to take on, and the respect that some people had for, some members of my family. So that was the only time that I actually felt overwhelmed. Other than that, I've kind of, taken things have been kinder to me, and life's been kinder to me.
Speaking of defining moments, Bacho, I'd love to know, has there been someone who's given you a certain advice which has changed the course of your life? And I'm going to follow that up with another question.
Yeah. Well, I actually was asked that question an hour ago by Elixir. And I'd never been asked that question before. And actually, it is a great question. And the answer is, last year in June, my father, sister, and I, we were driving in Scotland. My father, he doesn't live with us anymore, so my sister and I chose to do this little trip with him, to drive to the Scottish Highlands. And we had this terrible car crash. I'm a polo player. My back is my most important body part as a polo player. And we had this awful car crash. I broke my back in several pieces. I couldn't feel my legs for a few days. We had to be taken to hospital where we spent a couple of months. And obviously, one gets very negative in these moments, and you start to kind of question what's next. And certainly the polo side of my life was starting to look very iffy, and I wasn't even sure that I'd be able to walk again, forget about polo. And it was in that moment that one of the nurses actually walked up to me and said, I know that it's dark and it's sad and it looks gloomy, but all that you got to do is zoom out and put this into perspective. And as cliche as that is, it was the best, advice that anybody's ever given me. It just immediately cured me. And sitting here now, continuing to play. I played yesterday, going back to Jaipur first thing in the morning, playing again 2 games actually tomorrow. I realized how important that advice was, and how insignificant that moment in my life was. And in addition to being, along with being insignificant, it was also the time of my life where I learned so many lessons. Again, cliche as it sounds, you got to appreciate the beautiful things in life, sort of thing. But that came home for me, that moment. As soon as I could, I took my father for a drink, and he was the one who was driving the car, and felt very guilty about it. And we just had a drink together and didn't say a word to each other, and both of us just sat there and cried. Because that moment was so special for us, and it felt, for a long time, it felt like we'd never be able to do that again. And so that nurse, Sarah, she was called, and I went back and wrote her a lovely letter and took her some roses.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. If you had to look ahead 5 years, 10 years from now, where do you see yourself and Jaipur, brand Jaipur, where do you see this 10 years from now?
Well, I think I'd like for us to become a city where we care, where we develop a better civic sense towards our environment, our people, our environment, but also our heritage. I think it's so important to preserve these monuments. They've stood the test of time for so many generations, and really it is our responsibility to keep them preserved and in good shape. Recently, there was he was an architect. I think he was a Dutch architect who was visiting Jaipur, and he did various. He works on large scale facilities for cities. So he's working on a project in Saudi where he's doing all the facilities for the city, like lighting and benches and footpaths, etc. And he'd been to Jaipur 30 years ago. And he said something that actually made a lot of sense. He's like, I came here 30 years ago, and there was the original, sort of layer of Jaipur. And I've come here now 30 years later, and I see that there's a layer that has developed on that original layer. And it's really the responsibility of people like you to ensure whether you retain the original layer or that you voluntarily let that the second layer develop on it. And if you ask me, I think we are just blind to the fact that there's a second layer developing. I've not noticed it, but it's there. You look at pictures and it's extremely sad. So I think a city that cares a little bit more about its heritage. And also, I think what I said earlier about experiences, I think people are now sophisticated enough that they no longer go to places just to see the sights. I think we've got to offer that value proposition to them that they can't get anywhere else. We've got some of the most incredible festivals If you ask me around the world, you won't find a festival like Holi. Festival of so much happiness and joy and of coming together. And it's just like there are moments which show like the dark side of humanity, and then there are moments that show the exact opposite. And Holi is that one moment where you really see the beauty of life and of community and of coming together. And so I really want to be able to connect the world with more such things that exist in our state.
Thank you so much.